The crystal champagne flute trembled slightly in my hand as I watched them from across the garden party. Martha and James Wilson, now going by the names Margaret and John Wallace, were holding court among Tampa's elite, laughing at some joke about real estate prices. My mother's blonde hair had more gray now, artfully covered with expensive highlights. Dad's stomach strained against his Ralph Lauren polo, but his trademark silver Rolex still gleamed on his wrist. They hadn't changed much in 10 years. Still playing the perfect couple. Still wearing wealth like a second skin. Still completely oblivious to the fact that their abandoned daughter was standing 20 feet away, wearing a Versus dress and a new identity. Darling, there you are. Richard Henderson IV, my husband of 6 months, wrapped his arm around my waist. I've been looking everywhere for you. The Wallaces simply must hear about your charity work with abandoned children. I suppressed a bitter smile. If he only knew. Lead the way, dear, I purred, letting him guide me toward my parents. My heart thundered against my ribs, but years of practice kept my expression pleasantly neutral. The last time I'd seen them this close, I was 12 years old, standing in Westbrook Mall in Seattle, facing a concrete pillar near the food court. Count to 100, Emma, Mom had said, her voice playful. No peeking. This is going to be so much fun. I believed her, even after everything, the whispered late-night conversations I wasn't supposed to hear, the mysterious bank visits, the way they'd been extra nice that whole week. I had still trusted them completely. 98, 99, 100. Ready or not, here I come. But they weren't hiding behind the potted plants or in the nearby stores. They weren't anywhere in the mall. As security camera footage later showed, they were already on I-5 South, their car packed with preloaded suitcases, their phones destroyed, their new identities waiting. Margaret, John, I'd like you to meet my wife, Victoria. Richard's voice pulled me back to the present. She's the one I've been telling you about, the angel who's revolutionizing our community's approach to child welfare. Mom, Margaret now extended her hand. So lovely to meet you. John and I were just saying how impressed we are with the Henderson Foundation's work. I grasped her hand, feeling the familiar softness of her skin. She didn't flinch, didn't show any sign of recognition. The brown contact lenses, subtle plastic surgery, and a decade of hard living had done their job well. Emma Wilson, the crying 12-year-old from the mall security footage, had vanished. In her place stood Victoria Henderson, Tampa's newest socialite and philanthropist. The pleasure's mine, I replied, my voice pitched slightly lower than my natural tone. Richard tells me you're new to the area. Dad, John Wallace now, nodded enthusiastically. Moved down from Chicago last year. The real estate market here was too good to pass up. Another lie. They'd spent the past decade bouncing between luxury communities across the country, always moving just before people started asking too many questions about their past. Chicago was just their latest stop before Tampa. You must join us for dinner, Richard insisted. Victoria's an amazing hostess, and our new villa has the most spectacular sunset view over the bay. I watched their faces carefully as they accepted. No hesitation. No guilt. Not even a flicker of recognition. To them, I was just another wealthy woman in their new social circle. The daughter they'd abandoned was probably long forgotten. Just another inconvenient responsibility they'd shed on their way to the good life. They didn't know I'd spent years tracking them. That every move they'd made since leaving me in that mall had been documented. Every alias noted, every fraud scheme recorded. They had no idea that their new neighbor's wife was the same girl who'd spent 3 years in foster care before aging out of the system. Wonderful, Mom exclaimed. We'd love to see your home. The real estate agent mentioned the Henderson villa when we were house hunting. It's the reason we chose this neighborhood. Of course it was. I made sure the real estate agent showed them properties near ours. Just like I'd ensured Richard's path crossed with John's at the country club, leading to this perfectly orchestrated introduction. Tomorrow night then, Richard suggested. Say, 7 o'clock. As they agreed and exchanged contact information, I sipped my champagne and remembered the first night in foster care. I'd cried myself sick, convinced there had been some mistake, that my parents would come back, that it was all part of the game. The police had been kind but firm. Security footage showed my parents' calculated departure, their pre-packed car, their clearly planned escape. Your parents have been planning this for some time, Detective Sarah Martinez had explained gently. They've emptied their accounts, sold their assets, and disappeared. I'm so sorry, Emma. But she'd been wrong about one thing. They hadn't disappeared completely. Money leaves trails, and people who love luxury leave even bigger ones. It had taken years, but I found them. Followed them, studied them. Learned their patterns, their weaknesses, their new favorite wines and restaurants and vacation spots. I look forward to having you in our home, I said warmly, touching Mom's arm in a friendly gesture. The diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist was new, probably bought with money from their latest investment scheme. As Richard led me away to mingle with other guests, I caught Dad checking his phone, probably monitoring the stock market. He still had the same tell when he was nervous, a slight twitch in his left eye. He was worried about something. He should be. The next morning, I stood in my custom closet, selecting the perfect outfit for dinner. The navy channel dress was conservative enough for a hostess, but cut perfectly to command attention. Richard was already at the office. He practically lived there, which had made implementing my plan so much easier. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Martinez. You sure about this? Sarah Martinez wasn't just the detective who'd handled my abandonment case. She'd become my mentor, my confidant, and eventually my partner in planning what came next. After watching my parents destroy other families with their investment frauds and real estate schemes, she'd understood why simply arresting them wasn't enough. Everything's ready, I texted back. They'll never see it coming. I moved to my home office, unlocking the hidden safe behind an abstract painting. Inside was a decade of evidence. Photos, bank records, witness statements, and USB drives containing everything needed to destroy Margaret and John Wallace, along with every other identity they'd hidden behind. But that wasn't all. There were also documents proving they'd abandoned other children before me, 2 in different states, using different names. I found their first daughter, now a homeless woman in Portland. The second had died of an overdose years ago. I was just the latest, the one they thought had worked out perfectly. Until now. My phone buzzed again. A message from the catering company confirming tonight's dinner. Everything had to be perfect. The wine, the food, the timing. Even the security cameras I had installed throughout the house were carefully hidden and positioned. I opened my laptop, checking the special program I had developed. With one click, it would freeze every account they owned, lock them out of their current identities, and send evidence of their crimes to law enforcement in 12 states. But that was just the beginning. 10 years ago, they thought they were teaching me a lesson by leaving me in that mall. Instead, they taught me something far more valuable: how to plan, how to wait, and how to strike when your target least expects it. The doorbell rang, the florist with arrangements for tonight's dinner. Roses, Mom's favorite. She'd see them on the dining room table, arranged just like she used to do for her own dinner parties. Perfect, I told the delivery man. Everything needs to be perfect. Because tonight Martha and James Wilson weren't just having dinner with their wealthy new neighbors. They were walking into a trap 10 years in the making, orchestrated by the daughter they trained so well in the art of deception. I checked my reflection one last time. The brown contacts masked my natural blue eyes, the ones I'd inherited from Mom. The subtle changes to my face from minor surgeries had erased the Wilson family resemblance. But underneath it all, I was still Emma, the girl who counted to 100 and found her whole world changed. Time to play a new game, I whispered to my reflection. And this time, I make the rules. 7 o'clock arrived with precise timing. The doorbell chimed as I adjusted the last wine glass, its crystal catching the sunset through our bay windows. My parents, the Wallaces now, stood at the door with practiced smiles and an expensive bottle of Bordeaux. Victoria, darling, Mom air-kissed my cheeks, her Chanel no. 5 perfumes still the same after all these years. Your home's absolutely stunning. Thank you, Margaret. The name felt like acid on my tongue. Richard will be joining us shortly. Last-minute business call. That was a lie. Richard was exactly where I needed him to be, trapped in a fictitious shareholders meeting I'd orchestrated through his secretary. He wouldn't be interrupting tonight's performance. I led them through the villa, watching as Mom's eyes cataloged every expensive piece, mentally calculating our net worth. Some habits never change. She'd done the same thing at every dinner party we'd hosted in our old life. The art collection is extraordinary, Dad commented, pausing before a particular painting. Is that an original Rothko? Good eye, John. I smiled, remembering how he taught me to appreciate art during our Sunday museum visits. Richard's family has quite the collection. The painting he admired was actually a replica, a perfect fake, just like everything else in this carefully constructed scene. Just like me. Dinner is served on the terrace, I announce, leading them through French doors to the outdoor dining area. The Tampa Bay sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, reflecting off the infinity pool. This view, Mom gasped appropriately. You must tell us how you managed to acquire this property. I poured the wine, watching the red liquid swirl like blood. Oh, it's quite a story, rather like your journey from Chicago. A flicker of tension crossed Dad's face. They didn't like discussing their pasts, any of their pasts. Speaking of Chicago, I continued casually, I have a colleague there who mentioned the most interesting case. A couple who vanished after running a real estate investment scheme. Left quite a few retirees penniless. Mom's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her wine. How dreadful. But surely that's not dinner conversation. No. I sipped my water, watching them over the rim. I find such stories fascinating. People who reinvent themselves, move from city to city, always staying one step ahead. Dad's left eye twitched. Victoria, you mentioned your charity work. Tell us more about that. Of course. I signaled the server to bring the first course. We focus on helping abandoned children, particularly those left in public places, malls, parks, train stations. It's surprising how often it happens. The soup spoons clinked against fine china as an uncomfortable silence fell. Mom's perfect makeup couldn't quite hide her pallor. The most interesting cases are the ones where the parents plan it. I continued, my voice deliberately light. Did you know abandoned children often count? In malls especially. They count and count, thinking it's all a game. Dad set his spoon down hard enough to splash soup. John, Mom warned quietly. The worst part, I went on, is how these parents usually prosper afterward. New names, new cities, new victims. While they're children. I let the sentence hang. Perhaps we should discuss something else. Dad suggested firmly. I smiled, reaching for my phone. Actually, I have something to show you both, a special project I've been working on. The massive outdoor television screen flickered to life. Security camera footage from Westbrook Mall filled the screen, grainy but clear enough. A woman leading a young girl to a pillar, a man checking his watch. The girl counting. The couple hurrying away. Mom's wine glass shattered on the terrace tiles. Interesting footage, isn't it? I kept my voice steady. December 15th, 2013. Westbrook Mall, Seattle. A game of hide and seek never ended. Who are you? Dad's voice was hoarse. I removed my contact lenses slowly, revealing my natural blue eyes. His eyes. Count to 100, Daddy, no peeking. Mom's scream was cut short by the arrival of Detective Martinez and her team, emerging from their hiding places around the terrace. Martha and James Wilson, Martinez announced, or should I say Margaret and John Wallace? You're under arrest for child abandonment, fraud, and about 30 other charges we've been building for a decade. Emma? Mom whispered, finally seeing through my disguise. But? How? I learned from the best, I replied coldly. You taught me how to disappear, how to plan, how to wait for the perfect moment. Tonight's dinner party. I've been planning it longer than you planned leaving me in that mall. As Martinez read them their rights, I clicked a button on my phone. Across the country, their accounts began freezing. Their fake identities unraveled. Their carefully constructed world collapsed, just like mine had at count 100. You don't understand. Dad pleaded as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. We had debts, enemies. We had tow. Save it for your other daughters. I cut him off. Yes, I found them too. Jessica in Portland, living on the streets. Maria, dead from an overdose in Detroit. I'm the only one who survived your games. Mom sagged in her restraints. We gave you a better life, she whispered. You learned to be strong. Strong. I walked closer, letting her see exactly what she created. I learned to be ruthless. Every luxury you see here. Bought with the fortune I made hunting people like you. Every client of my charity. Some I saved while tracking you down. The Henderson fortune, Dad started. Doesn't exist, I finished. Richard's as broke as you're about to be. He just doesn't know it yet. Another lesson you taught me, always have a perfect exit strategy. As they were led away, I raised my water glass in a mock toast. Thanks for the game, Mom and Dad. I won. The morning after my parents' arrest, I sat in Detective Martinez's office, watching their interrogation through a two-way mirror. They'd been separated, standard procedure, but their stories were falling apart in identical ways. 12 states, 17 victims, over $30 million in fraud. Martinez read from her file and asked just what we know about, but the child abandonment charges, those are what will bury them. Mom was crying now, her expensive mascara creating dark rivers down her cheeks. We gave her everything. Private schools, dance lessons, the best clothes. Until you left her counting in a mall, Martinez's voice was ice. Tell me about the other girls, Jessica and Maria. I watched Mom's face crumble. In the adjacent room, Dad was trying to bargain, offering names of other criminals, trying to save himself, like he always did. Your testimony won't be necessary, Martinez told me. The evidence is overwhelming. They'll never see freedom again. Good, I stood smoothing my dress. I have other matters to attend to. Those matters started with Richard Henderson Aye, who was currently discovering that his family's fortune had vanished overnight. My final gift to my parents would be watching their social circle implode as the truth about the Hendersons' finances emerged. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica, my homeless sister in Portland. Is it true? Did you get them? I found Jessica 3 years ago, living under a bridge. She'd been their first experiment in abandonment, left at a playground when she was 9. Unlike me, she'd never recovered. But that was about to change. Yes, I texted back. The trust fund is yours whenever you're ready. Rehab, therapy, everything you need. Maria would never get her justice. I found her grave in Detroit 2 years ago, another Jane Doe, until I connected the dots. But Jessica could still have a chance. Back at the villa, I began packing. Victoria Henderson would disappear tonight, just like Emma Wilson had vanished years ago. But this time, the disappearance would be on my terms. Mrs. Henderson. Our housekeeper appeared at the door. Mr. Henderson is here. He seems upset. I could hear Richard's shouts from downstairs. The man who'd married me for my supposed connections to Tampa's elite was discovering that those connections were as fake as my identity. Victoria. He burst into the bedroom, face red. What have you done? The accounts, everything's gone. Including your secret accounts in the Caymans, I added calmly. The ones you thought I didn't know about. Amazing what people reveal when they think they're married to a wealthy socialite. His face went from red to white. You're not. Victoria Henderson? No, that person never existed. Just like your family's fortune never existed. You've been living on borrowed money and borrowed time, Richard. Rather like my parents. I'll call the police. They're rather busy with the Wallaces right now, or should I say, the Wilsons? My parents, by the way. The ones you so eagerly invited to dinner. Understanding dawned in his eyes. The abandoned daughter, the one they've been talking about on the news, that's you. Among other things, I closed my suitcase. Don't worry, dear. I've left you enough to avoid prison. Consider it a divorce settlement. As I walked out, he called after me, You'll never get away with this. But I already had. Victoria Henderson would vanish, leaving behind a perfectly legal paper trail showing she donated her fortune to a children's charity. By tomorrow, Richard would discover that his own financial crimes had been anonymously reported to the SEC. My next stop was a private airfield outside Tampa. A small jet waited, its engines humming softly in the evening air. Everything's ready, Martinez said, meeting me at the hangar. Your new identity is clean. Even I don't know where you're going. Better that way. I hugged her tight. Thank you. For everything. Just don't disappear completely. Some of us actually care about Emma Wilson. I smiled. Emma Wilson died at Count 99 in that mall. But maybe she'll send postcards. The jet carried me away from Tampa, away from the wreckage of lives I carefully dismantled. My parents would face justice. Richard would face consequences. And somewhere in Portland, Jessica was checking into a private rehabilitation center, her future finally secure. My phone buzzed one last time, a news alert. Socialite vanishes after exposing family fraud ring. I turned off the phone and looked out the window. Below, city lights twinkled like stars, each one representing countless stories, countless games of hide and seek, countless chances to disappear or be found. Mom had been right about one thing: they had made me strong. Strong enough to survive, to hunt, to win. But they'd forgotten the most important rule of any game. The best player is the one who makes their own rules. 5 years later, I sat in a Parisian cafe, sipping espresso and reading about my parents' latest appeal denial. Their story had become a Netflix documentary, a cautionary tale about family fraud and generational trauma. I hadn't watched it. The newspaper headline was in French, but the photos were clear: Martha and James Wilson, aged by prison and regret, being led back to their cells. 25 years without parole, one for each year of my life they tried to destroy. My phone buzzed with a secure message from Jessica. 5 years sober today. The center's letting me counsel other survivors. Thank you, sis. I smiled, remembering the broken woman I'd found under that Portland bridge. Now she was helping others, turning our family's darkness into light. Some games had winners after all. Detective Martinez's annual update arrived next. Richard Henderson took a plea deal, 6 years. Your parents still ask about you every day. The other victims send their thanks, all their money's been recovered. I set my phone down, watching Parisian life flow past the cafe table. Here, I was just another American expatriate, running a small bookshop in the Marais. My neighbors knew me as Sophie Laurent, a quiet woman with kind eyes and a habit of helping lost children find their way home. They didn't know about the international foundation I ran anonymously, tracking down parents who abandoned their children, ensuring justice and recovery funds for the victims. They didn't know that every major child welfare organization now used protocols I developed, systems to prevent what had happened to me, Jessica, and Maria. The bell above the shop door chimed. A young girl rushed in, crying, separated from her mother in the crowded streets. My assistant was already calling the police, following our standard procedure for lost children. Want to count together while we wait? I asked the girl in French. Sometimes counting helps. She nodded, sniffling. We reached 98 when her frantic mother burst in. Their tearful reunion made my heart ache, not with old pain, but with quiet relief. Some wounds heal into strength. Later that night, I opened a letter forwarded through layers of security. Mom's handwriting, still elegant despite the prison paper. Dear Emma, they say this might reach you. I doubt it will. You were always better at hiding than we were at seeking. I want you to know that we understand now. Each day here is like counting in that mall, waiting, hoping, knowing no one is coming. You won the game, daughter. You won it all. Mom. I burned the letter in my kitchen sink, watching the ashes swirl away. They still didn't understand. It was never about winning. It was about making sure no other child would count to 100 in vain. My security system beeped, someone at the shop door after hours. The camera showed Martinez somehow tracked me down. Just checking in, she said when I let her in. Making sure you're still counting. Always, I replied. But now I count my victories instead of my losses. She looked around my little bookshop, at the wall of photos showing rescued children, at the quiet life I'd built from the ashes of their games. Ready to come home? She asked, like she did every year. I smiled, thinking of all the homes I'd had, all the names I'd worn, all the counts I'd finished. I am home, I said. And the counting's finally done.